I don't think Lethbridge would be Lethbridge without the university to begin with. I mean, its cultural influence on Lethbridge has just been incredible over the years, and even in the years we've been gone, you can see that more and more. The diversity of the populations, the neat little shops and restaurants and so on. The interaction with high schools and grade schools of faculty going out to them. So I think the university has had this tremendous impact on Lethbridge, but I also think the university would not be the same without Lethbridge and surrounding area. I mean, it's a big area. Lethbridge is, we use that generally. It's the obvious. The university wouldn't exist if a group of people here in the community had not come together and said, we've got to have a university here.
You see, our requirements would be totally different than the people in the trades and so on. Now, I'm not trying to knock the trades in any way, because I think they're very, very important. Then there was, okay, if we establish a university, who's going to pay for it and all that sort of stuff, and where's the site going to be? And of course, the siting of the university was a major controversy. The options were 4 in number. One was to stay with the college campus. Another one was to go out at the Ag Research Station, somewhere in that area. Another one was to go to the north side near the television station, because there was lots of land there and facilities were there. And the 4th option was to come over to the west side.
Well, I remember when they were constructing the university, there was nothing on the west side but some farms. And people really didn't pay much attention to what was going on over here, outside of the fact that they started to see this building emerge in the coulees. And that was a bit intriguing. But back in the day, there was not even a direct road to the university. If you wanted to get here, you had to go out on the highway, come back in along the west side gravel roads, and then you ended up here at the university. So it really was pretty remote. And I think for the first decade or so, people found it a bit not integrated into the community. It seemed to be a standalone thing, and they weren't sure what it was going to do or be for the community. But thankfully, the people who had the insight to bring an institution such as this to this town kept being very vocal about what kinds of opportunities it would offer our young people, what kinds of opportunities it would offer the citizens, and what kinds of economic opportunities it would offer the city.
The university was isolated. It was a big concrete building on one side of the river. The city was on the other side. There never could have been a greater division between what they called Gown and Town as there was in Lethbridge. I mean, it was isolated. There were farms all around the university. I mean, if you walked off campus, you walked among somebody's cows. And gradually, as West Lethbridge built up, we really became more part of the city.
I remember when I came here that the community had a certain mistrust of the university. They kind of saw them as other, and those people who sort of hide and we don't know what they're doing. And I think that's much, much less now. And it's probably because we as a faculty are much more involved in the community than we used to be.
When the university first came to Lethbridge, I lived here, and I think people really didn't understand what it was all about, what the university was going to bring to the community, and what the professors were doing as far as sharing their knowledge with the students that were coming here. And many people have, and still to this day, bear the idea that university professors only work a very limited number of days in a year, and then the rest of the time is all playtime. And clearly that was a prevailing attitude when I was a younger person, but I see that things have changed, and they're starting to understand that the life of a university professor is not all roses. So we really do have a lot of work that we do. We engage in community things and all of the outside work that we do from our teaching, the research parts and whatnot. People are starting to get a better understanding of that. But I think in the beginning, they really didn't understand that it wasn't all about just teaching. There was other components to the job as well.
The first day I was here, Owen Holmes was the vice president academic. And he called me in to see him, and I thought he was going to call me in to scold me for showing up a day late because my car broke down driving from Montreal, and I had to wait to get it fixed. And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't get here till July 2nd, or 3rd." And he said, "No, I do not care about that." He said, "But I just want to tell you not to cut your grass on Wednesday afternoon." And I looked at him and I went, "What?" And he said, it's a small town, people assume professors don't work in the summer, and that just reinforces that view. And he said, cut it on the weekend like everybody else or after dinner. And he was serious. And today you'd never hear that because the professors are more anonymous than they were then. But then they were not. The city was only about 28 or 30,000 people. And so you were visible. And everybody lived on the south side. Nobody lived on the west side. So it was pretty clear what you were doing. So that's a big change. So again, reflecting a little less interaction with the town. But I think that both President Tennant and President Cade and now President Mann have made a real effort to take the university to the community, and that's really a positive.
But I think as it became part of the town, and then people began to see it as their university, and local students started to go rather than go to Edmonton, which was the destination university of the province.
Oh, I think the community was very, very supportive to have their own university here rather than having to go up to Calgary or Edmonton. The community strongly endorsed it.
It used to be a small town, it used to be a small university, and now we're getting close to 10,000 students. The city is close to 100,000 people, so I think we've had a huge impact on a city of this size. Students can stay at home. They don't have to go away to Calgary or Edmonton. They can stay in Lethbridge.
Over time, people have come to really appreciate that the university is here because we're bringing in people who often find Lethbridge is a very lovely place to be, those that can stand the wind, and they tend to want to settle here, some of them. So they're not only highly trained having come to the university, but they also appreciate Lethbridge as a city as well.
The formally educated are beginning to permeate into the community, which is very interesting. Though I remember going to UBC when I had a child graduating, and someone gave a keynote address, and he said, we train the leaders of tomorrow. And he said, it's not just the lawyers and the doctors and the professors. We train the community leaders. We train the people who head up not-for-profit agencies so that the expertise that we hope we give them leads the community in many, many ways. And I think that's why I want my students to have the skills, because they will have to lead.
We knew we had to have a connection with community, and I'm defining community very broadly, whether that be agencies, other institutions, community members, individuals or what have you. But most of the teaching in the university was about classroom things, and there wasn't a really good connection to what was out there. But we knew in our nursing program, we needed those connections with clinical folks because we needed to send our students there.
Half of our program is rural, so I've been all over southern Alberta with my students and really enjoyed going into small schools and being part of the community. So the connection between community and university research is huge here. And so on the front lines of where things are happening and where theory and practice meet in education has been a huge thing for me. I love that.
But we shouldn't be separate from the community. And I think if we do, there's a big danger. Two things that I saw. One of the dangers is that we begin to sort of present our research as something distant and esoteric that we don't expect people to understand. And the other thing that happens, of course, this is being a scientist, is that people begin to mistrust science because they think they don't understand it. They don't believe in it. It may contradict their religious beliefs, so how could it possibly be true?
Well, I think this is something that the university is starting to really capitalize on. We seem to be sending a lot more people out into the community, sharing knowledge with community members than ever before. And I think it's a trend that we should really encourage to continue and even expand, because it makes them more tied to the university. They get a better understanding of what's happening over here if they can see some value in the knowledge that we can share with them. So lately I've been working a lot in community projects and working with professional development in various community groups, and they so appreciate the opportunity to hear what's happening on the research end and yet still gain from what we've learned, help change their practice. And so they're delivering to the public the best kinds of services they possibly can based on our recent research and the kinds of outcomes that we know you can expect by employing various kinds of educational techniques. So I think it's rather nice that the community is so open to the interchange across the river. They're very interested to hear what we have to say.
So you have to go off campus if you really want to interact with them. So SACPA, for example, is really good because you go there and you interact with the community and so on. I think that for new faculty, they don't understand why the extension to the community is so important, the sort of town and gown thing, but it is. And I give a lot of public talks in and around Lethbridge because I'm older and recognize that people are paying your salary and they need to know what it is that they're paying for. And they need to know it in English, not in some sort of neuroscientists or psychologists or whatever speak, right? It's got to be in English.
The students, both undergraduate and graduate, that I got to take with me on research trips, because that's where you really learn about community. Going with one of my students to the McClure Fireside in Barrier, very bright young gal, community people just loved her, and we just had a lot of fun. Like it's a whole other way to get to know students, going to places like L'Orange and those kind of things where you get to see them modeling what you've been teaching them. This importance of connecting with knowledge and community and putting it in a language that makes sense for community so that they can use it on a daily basis.
Adapting teaching to be relevant to local issues and problems and conditions. That's one element of bringing the community in. The other way of doing that is to bring people from the community in to deliver guest lectures, to provide a local community view of different elements of economic activity or social activity.
Well, I think the direction, there was a very important shift with the last presidency of Mike Mann, and he really spoke a lot about volunteerism, right? And sure enough, like you put back into the community, you're going to get stuff back. So I like that idea, that ideology that's out there, and I hope that continues.
I've tried to bring the community into my teaching in a couple of different ways. First, and of course, I'm a geographer. Perhaps if I was teaching first-year calculus, Lethbridge wouldn't matter as much as it does to a geographer. So when I arrived in Alberta, all of my examples came from Ontario and Quebec. I was really concerned in the early years with bringing in more Lethbridge content, more Alberta content, more Western Canadian content, meaning that I had to figure out what was going on in the broader community, economically, socially, culturally. And I believe that I should test on that as well. And sometimes, and this brings me into the third point, we incorporate a field visit with the guest lecture. So we get out of the classroom and out of the university, away from the west side, and get into the community.
Just look across the city and the classrooms in the city, or the law offices in the city. Where do they get their undergraduate degrees? Sometimes graduate degrees, right here. That's exactly right. So many of them would have left and gone to another university and maybe not come back. But I've always been impressed with the people that a number of lawyers I knew, they got their undergraduate degree here, went to U of A, and they came back because it was such a pleasant town to live in.
It used to be that students, when they graduated, if they wanted to stay in town, there wasn't a big market, but many of them would go to Calgary, for example, or Vancouver. When Nortel was the big Canadian company, we had at one stage 6 of our students on co-op at Nortel. All of the students that we sent out were very good students, and Nortel phoned up the head of applied studies and co-op at that time and said, how many students do you have in the program? And she gave them a number, and the Nortel person said, well, we'll take them all. Of course, it's great for students, it's good for the company as well. So many of our students ended up working all over Canada, some in the States. We have a person at Netflix now. We have people at Google, Amazon. So they're all over the place now. There is some truth to the idea that universities feed companies with the sorts of people that they need.
The Wellness Center over here was initiated by the city of Lethbridge, putting up, I think it was $5 million, which didn't pay for the whole thing, of course, but it motivated others to get involved. And then yesterday we drove by the sports stadium. Here's this big sign out there. It says Community Sports Stadium, which is what I thought it always would be. And my guess is more community teams play there than university teams. So there's never been this shyness on the part of the university to reach out to the city. And
the university is important. It has a profile, and I think people are aware of that, and they're aware that when we're putting in a $250 million destination project, that has all kinds of spin-offs for the rest of the community. First choice capital, physical education facilities, the climbing wall, and all kinds of community activities in the pool mean that's another way that the community is making their way onto the campus to do judo and ballet and different team sports.
the university also has a presence downtown in the Penny Building. And that was quite deliberate by the city and Mr. Penny to give the university an opportunity to be downtown, and that seems to work very well.
Having the Penny Building downtown has made a difference because people can go there for university events, like the donors recognition and all these various things. At one point they had them down at Paradise. That's even worse, because if you live on the south side, why do you want to drive all the way down there? It's a mindset of a small place, right?
We really were seen as the ivory tower, separate from the community, in this community, but separate from the community. And I remember walking down the hallway earlier this year and thinking, boy, we are a rich intellectual resource. Because you walk down the hallway and somebody's talking about this and somebody's talking about that and somebody's coming to speak. And the general public often comes to these. But I think that as an intellectual community, we're really very special and much, much broader than we used to be.
In the beginning, people weren't sure what this university was really all about, and they were still typically sending the young people from the community were going to Calgary or Edmonton to get their education. Now we see droves of people coming from Calgary and Edmonton to take classes here, partly because of the class sizes that we offer, the contact time with professors and whatnot. Clearly, we are changing the community's view on what this education can mean for them and their families, and they've embraced the idea of Lethbridge being more of a varsity sort of town. They're starting to appreciate that the university brings in all kinds of students that increase the economic potential of the city, and that's a good thing for everybody. I think that they're starting to appreciate that we have very high quality people teaching at this university, and this is a good and viable choice for sending students to us.
The standards of good education are universal. People will come to where the quality of an education is high, or where the skills they're after are represented to a high level in research, for example. Students are attracted to that. The very fact that we do have an increasingly diverse community really helps to prepare us for that. I think it will be an ongoing challenge for us all to come to terms with of what a truly global experience is for tomorrow's student.
People are understanding there is a role, that we have an obligation. You know, we're a publicly funded institution. We should do things that help the community, that there are needs out there. I mean, we've always sent, as you're well aware, students to education settings to learn about teaching. We've done that for nursing. But what other kind of students can go out there? What can they do to benefit the community? And it's not just the Lethbridge community, it's the community beyond that. How can we get students to understand the importance of being a good citizen and participating in society at large, that we all have the role to make the society a better place. And people need to take that very seriously.
No obvious solutions to it, but I think it'll be experiential as we go through. I think our students have a lot to learn about diverse environments, and it's an area that as a university we have to think about, and that's why I'm so much of a big supporter of the whole internationalization initiative within the university, because I think that we have a responsibility beyond Southern Alberta, beyond Alberta. We have a global responsibility to produce citizens that can accommodate many different ways of looking at the world.
Something that I advocate, that I haven't seen the universities also think about, is teaching across the lifespan. We are still hanging on to the belief system that the people who should be our undergraduate students will be between ages 18 and 25. And there's an awful lot of people out there who aren't 18 to 25, who want to know more.
Another thing I think we could do is to make classes that are specifically non-degree directed, not necessarily for credit, but for interest. Kind of an extension school sort of idea, right? That could appeal to the community. People who wouldn't mind coming over in the evening to take a course in well, any subject at all, right? Just out of interest. I think that's the kind of thing we could do more of.